Henriette Sophie Widerberg, the 3rd of September 1796 to 3 April 1872, was a Swedish opera singer, soprano, actor and memoirist, the most famed singer on the Swedish stage of her time. She was counted as the most popular singer in Sweden during the 1810s and 1830s. She was also one of the most talked about beauties on the stage. Background: Henriette Widerberg was born into a theatrical family in Stockholm as the child of Andreas Widerberg and Anna Katharina Widerbeck. Stars in the troupe de Menaciska Sällskapet that performed in the first real theatre of Gothenburg, Komedihuset, in the 1780s. Her parents met on the stage and married the same night in 1787, on which they played on stage Lovers. That year her father became the director of the same theatre, only to leave it to become one of the most famous actors on the stage of the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm, admired much by women, as it was said, because of his good looks, and also complimented by male critics for his male figure. Henriette's siblings also became performers, but were never so successful as she. A beautiful child, Henriette was early on sent by her mother to the stage in order to contribute to the household. In her memoirs, she describes how she played with dolls while her mother received presents from Henriette's adult male admirers. She was enrolled in Dramatens Elefskola in 1807. At which she was under the care of the principal Sofia Lovisa Graa, who educated her students according to the French traditions of Anne-Marie Melendez-Guilens and allowed her female pupils, according to the papers, a shocking freedom. From 1810 she was a part of the De Bruns travelling troupe, which performed in the Theatre Djurgårdsteatern in Stockholm in the summer. During the 1810s she was one of the most popular singers in Gothenburg. She returned to Stockholm in 1817, when she debuted on the stage of the Royal Swedish Opera as Laura in the opera Leon au le Château de Montenero by Nicholas Dalleryck, a performance which was touching to a degree which made the audience melt to tears. Opera career. Though she never learned to read notes, she had a great natural talent and could quickly learn her part in a song simply by having heard it once. Her voice was described as that of a nightingale. And when Jeanette Waselius, successor of Caroline Halle Muller, retired in 1820, Henriette replaced her as Sweden's first prima donna, in competition with Elizabeth Froslind and Anna Sophia Sevelin. Her salary reflected her position. She was paid 1,600. As comparison, the male actor with the highest salary was paid 1,800, and the lowest salary for an actress was 200. In her memoirs, Widerberg talks about the circumstances regarding the 1820 dismissal of Jeanette Waselius that led to her own rise to the top. At the time of her dismissal, the celebrated Waselius, as she was called, was only 36 and at the top of her ability. She was also widely recommended for her professional moral. There was no reason for her dismissal other than that she was involved in a conflict with the influential Edward Dupuy, actor, singer and master of the opera's chapel, a man Henriette describes as mean as he was beautiful. Despite that, Henriette Widerberg greatly benefited from the dismissal of Waselius, as it made her the prima donna of the opera. She points out in her memoirs her opinion that Jeanette Waselius had been treated unjustly, and that Dupuy had abused his power. Widerberg started with parts in light operettas, until her performance in La Vestale by Spontini, in 1821, proved her capable of performing more demanding parts. She played Emily in Maleren och Magdalena, The Painter and the Models, by Emmy Hul, Clara in Adolphe Clara, Au les deux prisonniers by Dalleryck, Cora in Cora och Alonso by Johann Gottlieb Naumann, Pamina in The Magic Flute, Zerline in Fra Diavolo, Anna in Don Juan, the title part in La Dame Blanche by Boieldieu and Anna in Friskaitana, The Poachers, by Weber, Julia in Vestalena, The Vestals, the title role in Armida by Rossini, and Amazili in Fernan Cortez by Spontini. In her performance as Zerlina in Fra Diavolo, the 17th of May 1833, she became the first singer to do a scene of undressing on the stage of the opera. This shocked the press, which wrote, "Now, a woman can do on stage what she could not do even in the most intimate circle of a decent company, and undress herself until her petticoat." Quote, technique and judgments. She was seen as a great natural talent with a fantastic mezzo-soprano, but she had an easygoing character which made her indolent and uninterested in developing herself, as her natural ability made many things simple for her. She never bothered to read notes. Instead, she asked someone from the orchestra to sing and play her the part, and after hearing it, regardless of what instrument was used, she was able to sing it without much effort. The quality of her performance was said to have been dependent upon whether she liked a part or not, and she was described as bad and screamy in parts she did not care for, mediocre in parts she was indifferent to, and fabulous in parts she liked. If she pleased to adjust herself to the situation, and she could, when she wanted to, then this voice was irresistibly enchanting, intoxicating. The poetry of voice was something no singer knew more than she. She was called the Malibran of Sweden. As Orvarod wrote, "A Malibran without learning, but what voice! Oh, thou nightingales!" Quote, as a person, Widerberg was described as witty, happy and kind. She had the ability to laugh at herself, and was neither greedy nor someone to plot against her colleagues. She was very much talked about because of her private life and her many love affairs. She had no sense of economy and lived without thinking about tomorrow. She lived with no restraint, and had a tendency to change the object of tender affection. In her memoirs she describes her many adventures, in which admirers invited her to manors in the country, dressed themselves as women in order to be allowed into her rooms, and tried to throw her into the river when she turned them down. There are numerous anecdotes of Henriette's career, and many stories from her own memoirs as well. One known incident, causing great amusement among the public, took place when she played Susanna in Figaro in 1821. The male singer who played Figaro, Edward Dupuy, the very same person who was responsible for the dismissal of Wassilia described above, invited her to his room to rehearse the play. But when she arrived he tried to seduce her. She declined the offer and left, which made him much disappointed. The next day she did not know her part, and Dupuy then reported her to the director, who placed her on house arrest in her rooms for delaying the rehearsals. She was deeply angered by this treatment, and when the caretaker wanted to put extra locks on her door, she threatened to jump out of the window. She was comforted by her colleagues, who visited her and cheered her up with a little party meant to see if it was legal to place women on arrest. Unfortunately, it was. This was one of the disciplinary rules that the actors later demanded to be removed in the Great Strike led by Ulrich Torslow and Sarah Fredrika Stromstedt at Torslow in 1827. During the performance, Henriette received such enthusiasm from the public that her anger vanished. But when they reached the part of the play at which Susanna was to slap Figaro 7 times, she did so with such enthusiasm that the audience started laughing. During a conflict with one of the theatre's directors, who was said to have been less than careful about his hygiene, the director questioned Henriette about her bills regarding such things and she replied, "It is easy to say, Mr. Count, for someone with no idea how much it costs to keep oneself clean and fresh." She also writes that when she complained about men and boys trying to take a look at her when she had to change during performances, this director chased them all away. but guarded her from them by observing her himself. Though, she adds, he was really quite harmless. She remained neutral during the great theatre strikes of 1827 and 1834. Later life. In 1837, she was given the title of court singer. The same year, however, she was fired from the Swedish Royal Opera because of her irregularity and the lack of effort she had shown over the last years. She continued as a guest actor for the next few years, but soon withdrew to private life, which was dominated by economic troubles. She was a guest artist at the opera in the 1838-39 season. Between 1842-44, she was employed at the Theatre Mind at Eton, where according to Aftonbladet she performed with the same talent that had been admired before. However, at the time she was heavily indebted to a nobleman and indebted her boss Lindeberg, who had placed himself as her security. The playwright August Blanche visited her in her poverty, when she and her brother Frederick Julius Widerberg, the alcoholic former leader of a theatre troupe, were helped only by Emily Hogquist. She opened a restaurant in 1848, and in 1850-51, she published her memoirs, En skådespelerskas The Memories of an Actress. She was eventually given a larger pension by the opera. She died in Stockholm. Henriette Widerberg has often been compared with Emily Hogquist, as their personalities and life stories were very much alike, and Emily in many ways filled the place of Henriette when she retired. Family. Widerberg never married, but she had several children. She describes in her memoirs how her children watched her in the death scene in Romeo and Juliet, and started to cry, "Mother is dead. Mother is dead." Her daughters Georgina and Julia were also to be famed on the stage. Georgina as an actor and Julia as a singer, and her son was to become a well-known musician. Georgina Wilson, née Widerberg, 1821–1858. Daughter of the Secretary of the British Embassy, Charles Manners St. George, was active as an actor from 1835 within travelling companies in Djurgårdsteatern and Mind at Eton, 1843–44, where she was appreciated within finer comedy. Julia Lydberg, née Widerberg, 1824–1847. Debuted as a singer at the opera in 1841 and was described as musical, sensitive and lovable. Both daughters left after themselves a beautiful non-clouded memory. The son of Henriette was known and liked as a street musician and guitarist, and sang with a high and beautiful tenor, with such an expression, and he was placed as a student in the opera in 1858. However, he soon left the opera as he preferred to sing and play on the street as a free bohème. He was known as the Beautiful Rose. See also Elizabeth Olin, Lovisa Augusti, Justina Casali, Osterberg, Karin Ayal, Svenska Kvinna, Förgångare, Niskapare, Swedish women, predecessors, pioneers, Lund, Signum 1990. ISBN 91-87896-03-6. Swedish. 1. Biblioteksbladet Tiondagangen. 1925. Swedish. 2. Swedish. 3. Europa Konstnärer. The Artists of Europe. 1887. Arvid Arnfelt. Swedish. 4. Herman Hoberg. Svensk Biografiskt Handlexikon. Swedish Dictionary. 1906. Swedish. Georg Nordensvan. Svensk Titer och Svenska Skådespelare från Gustaf III till våra dagar. Forster Bandit. 1773–1842. Quote. Swedish. Swedish theatre and Swedish actors from the days of Gustaf III to our days. First book. 1772–1842. Quote. Georg Nordensvan. Svensk Titer och Svenska Skådespelare från Gustaf III till våra dagar. Andra Bandit, 1842–1918. Quote, Swedish theatre and Swedish actors from the days of Gustav III to our days. Second book, 1842–1918. Quote, 5. Swedish. 6. Svensk dialect lexicon. Ordbok of svenska allmänspråket. Swedish. Min af Kongel. Dramatiska titeln med en repertoire. 1825. To the memory of the Royal Dramatic Theatre. With a repertoire. Swedish. Bygde acute n. Supplement till Kongel. Dramatiska titelns min. Supplements to the memory of the Royal Dramatic Theatre. 1826. Swedish. Kungliga Titans Repertoire 1773–1973. The Repertoire of the Royal Theatre 1773–1973. 1974. Swedish.